And what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Designated Players and MLS podcast. Last episode, we talked about some big MLS happenings amongst players and clubs. And this week, it's time to chat coaches. Nashville SC has just recently parted ways with Gary Smith after 4 years and 4 playoff appearances. We'll cover his time in Tennessee and what Nashville should look for in a new coach. Then, there's already a new appointment in the Canadian men's national team in the form of MLS Canada head coaches, the super MLS stan Jesse Marsch. He's got some real funky name that's attached to it, and we're going to dive deep into it about his role, how he got it, and if the USMNT is going to feel the pain of Jesse not being hired. I'm Andrew, that's Connor, and here is this week's MLS news. Got it right that time.
Yeah, it only took like 3 tries to get it.
Listen, third time's a charm, right?
I guess so.
Yeah. How you doing?
Good. I have decided I'm going every time you ask me how I'm doing, I'm gonna give you a question as well, and I want you to answer it every time that I ask you.
I'm doing better than you. There's your answer.
That's not my question. My question for you is what is your favorite TikTok dance?
That's I'm 27 years old. I don't have it. It's we're getting a new segment called Connor's Question of the Day, which will have a total of 0 answers to it because
That's how we like it.
that's not how that works. I like the idea though, but I don't have.
Oh, don't worry. I will be coming back with plenty of more questions that you don't want to answer.
Well, yeah, you're gonna get the same ones if I don't have them. So
I think the real question is it that you don't want to answer or is that you can't answer?
I can't answer.
Okay, so you would answer
No,
if you
like I can't because I don't have one. The answer is I don't have.
yeah, exactly. But if you knew TikTok dances, you would have a favorite.
Sorry, my TikTok's filled with my TikTok's filled with Minecraft jumpers as Reddit is red across the back.
What are you
And
talking about?
have you ever seen those TikToks where it's like it's a like a Reddit post that like
Oh yeah, 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 yeah. They're doing some like
tell me your craziest story. So
yeah, and someone's doing
I
some
go and listen to
Minecraft
that as I'm
jumping
watching this
thing.
guy
Yeah,
jump
yeah.
across Minecraft blocks.
I've seen that on Snapchat a lot actually.
That's my mine is all like just completely zone out. Mine shuts down for an hour and a half, and then I'm like, oh look, it's 12. I gotta go to bed.
Yeah, and then you go on Twitter for 5 minutes and rage yourself.
No, if I go on Twitter, then I'm never going to sleep. It's brutal. I've been so far off Twitter. It's been great.
That's good for you. I'm happy for you.
Yeah, it's been so nice. Like I said, and it's tough because I want to interact more and be a part of it, but it's just not worth it. YouTube's where we're at. Come follow us on YouTube because that's where all of our cool content lies.
You know what is worth it though?
Your scarf.
Yeah, it is.
Nice.
My scarf is this lovely upside down, I think upside down, Nashville scarf band together with the Nashville logo. Yours is nicer.
I'm just gonna match it. Yep, mine's a bit nicer, but it's the same team. I love this one.
Well, believe it or not, I don't think we have Canadian men's national team scarves. So our
Not
choices
yet.
were a bit narrow.
I do have a couple of cool national teams. I got Tunisia. I got I think that's Martinique over there. I got
Martinique. You have a Martinique scarf
I
and
think I
you
got
don't
a Martin. I think yeah, Martinique
do you
is
even have a USA one?
yeah. It's well the USA one's right there,
Oh yeah.
and
It
then
just looks like a
this,
flag.
and then this one
Yeah, but
there
that's a
is also
Red Bull
USA.
one, so it doesn't count.
And then there's Spain. I've got
Oh, I don't have my Spain shirt on.
yeah. Where I got one more. I think it's like Austria. I think is yeah. Austria's there. So I've got a couple of national teams, but Canada's not one of them.
I'm in Canada, L. Lanada, if you will.
Man, you know who else caught an L this week? It'd be our friend Gary Smith. After
That's quite the way to put it.
isn't that a transition?
Guy
Um,
lost his job and caught an L for the designated players on MLS podcast.
Nobody is safe. All players and coaches are worthy of strays from this podcast. Deal with it.
You just
Um,
ruined it. Gary's never coming on the show now. Way to go.
Shucks. Taking a 0.00001% chance and making it zero. That's heartbreaking.
Hey, listen, there was a chance. Now it's gone.
4 years, four straight playoff appearances. Gary Smith is out as Nashville SC head coach. He coached a strong side with some great individual performers like Hani Mukhtar, Walker Zimmerman, and Alex Mawil, but he could never break the ceiling to get Nashville into one of the best teams in the league. He reached conference semifinals twice in those 4 years, but never got to go past it. And after leading the team from USL glory to MLS success, he leaves the field of Geodis Park with 63 wins, 53 draws, and 46 losses over 162 games. Connor, I want to ask you very, very simply, what is his legacy in Nashville? What will he be most remembered for?
Oh, dare I say a regular season merchant? Man, I
Damn.
mean, his teams
And
were
I'm
very
the one tossing out strays. Damn.
his team was very successful in the regular season. Quite frankly, I think they've overachieved a few times during their brief stint in MLS so far, including once where they finished third in the Eastern Conference. Had to check that because they've switched back and forth a little bit. Seventh in the Supporters Shield. They were sixth in the Supporters Shield last year. Is that right?
Yeah.
That feels
Yeah.
wrong.
Well, you got to remember they were like fourth in the East, but the
Yeah,
top
but I
like
thought they finished like ninth in the East. Who am I thinking of? Anyway, that's besides the point.
Connor doesn't know ball.
They were seventh. What?
Are you sure?
That's what Google says. 2023. Nashville was seventh. Because didn't they play Orlando in the first round?
2023 Nashville was seventh. The Supporters Shield they were.
They couldn't have possibly been sixth.
They were 19th. What?
Wikipedia said they were fourth.
Oh wait, hold on. No, they're 19th right now. Where were they? They were 12th last year.
Yeah, Wikipedia says they were fourth in the East, sixth in the Supporters Shield. All right, well,
Now we know they were
besides
ninth.
the
They were
point.
ninth in 2022. That was the year that I was like, okay, they were top 10. They were pretty good, and they were seventh in 21. That's the year I'm remembering.
Anyway, he never got past the quarterfinals in MLS Cup playoffs. And I feel like at this point we were kind of seeing that as like the best he was going to be able to take this team. So I don't blame them for making the move. It's obviously risky because I mean he brought consistency. Like your team was going to make the playoffs pretty much every year. You had a good enough team that you could make the playoffs. He would get you there, but it seemed like once he got you there, that was about it. Like the team wasn't one of the favorites to win it all. They never got past the quarterfinals. The best run they had was Leagues Cup, where they almost won Leagues Cup in its first year, but got taken down by the messy script. Um, so I don't blame them for moving on and really like taking a shot at someone else who they could think would maybe take them to that next step for them. But at the same time, if you bring in the wrong guy, now all of a sudden I think you're looking at potentially missing the playoffs, which make your arguments about MLS all you want. There's not necessarily a risk there if you miss. Like you're not getting relegated. So I don't see a problem with taking the risk in the hopes that you find the right guy to take Nashville to the next level and compete for cups and shields. Because this we talked about this team's defensively. They're one of I mean, they are the best defensive team in the league for plenty amount of time while he was in charge. So all you need to do is get the attack to start clicking, and we're looking at one of the better teams in the league.
Yeah, I mean, that's funny. This firing, there are always going to be people out there who are like, oh, there's no consequences in MLS because you don't get relegated. This dude lasted 13 games, now he's out of a job. This whole team now needs to rebuild and figure itself out. What do you mean there's no consequences? Oh, that doesn't count because okay. Anyways, for me, I think that the legacy for him is what I've coined the layer of the groundwork, right? He took a team from USL, made them defensively solid, like you mentioned, to compete right from the offing as soon as they got in, with an American heavy roster, which is very rare to see and do. And then he brought in some very exciting attacking flair and counter-attacking football. But like you mentioned, like there was this overarching feeling that he had hit his ceiling. And we had talked about it in the preview of their team this year, where the thought was maybe this is it. Maybe this is what he can give you. And Matt Doyle pointed it out and really summarized it pretty well. And he goes, firstly, he didn't develop talent, right? Look at the team. He didn't really have a lot of homegrowns break through. right? He was always trading for other players, who came through other systems. And if you look at the players that he sold, he never sold somebody for more than $1 million. And they were always to other MLS sides, right? There was no, I'm going to bring somebody in low, raise him up and then move him on. Now, is that him? Is that a product of him not getting the players that he needs? You know, arguments that won't be had here, but could be had. But the other side of it is that, for lack of a better term, he was stuck in his system and in his way, right? Defensively strong, counterattack, and when we're on the ball, can we create chances through wide play, which until Sam Surridge got here was interesting at best, right? They didn't have a big target guy to play off. He never developed out of that system. And when teams figured it out, Nashville struggled, and that's why you see them, out of the playoffs right now, 0 wins on the road, and can't figure out, what the next step is. Because of that, I agree with you. He probably won't be seen as an amazing top level coach that they've had, regardless of the success that he had. And maybe that's just from an outside point of view, where I think he did really well with what he had, comparative to other teams with these superstar players and what have you. But at the end of the day, he's going to be the guy that set them up with a good foundation to move forward. And there are just people who can get to a certain level and say, okay, that's it. I've done what I can do. Now it's time for somebody else to take over. And I think that's what he is. I think he did a really good job of giving them a good character, good defensive character, saying we're going to be difficult to break down. We're going to be difficult to beat for a long time. And they've still only conceded 19 goals, which is third or fourth fewest in the league right now. His goals against put him in the category of teams like Toronto, New York Red Bulls, like in the top 3 to 5, but he's not scoring goals, right? They're 16th, which is super low. So, as you mentioned, decently strong defensively, struggling going forward as has always been the case, and it's a system and his inability to change out of it. And again, maybe you can also argue that it's a player thing where people, their transfer policy prevented them from doing different things. Again, that argument can be had, I'm sure, but right now that's what he is.
Yeah, I mean, he's never had the roster that you would see of like a Miami, an FCC, like a LAFC. Like he's never had the multiple superstars. Like he's always worked with a really, like you said, really good defensive core and Hani Mukhtar and a dream at the attack.
Yeah,
But I mean, Hani Mukhtar and a dream can only take you so far, and at some point, maybe the question is whether or not it's an issue with the front office and their inability to bring in a striker to help out Hani Mukhtar, or if it's a question of Gary Smith and his system and not being able to make these strikers work in his system. Because, I mean, at some point, it's like I start to question on who to point the finger at when multiple strikers come in and multiple strikers fail as bad as they have in Nashville. But
totally fair.
if they had someone who really hit the ground running and Surge could still be that person for them, then we could be looking at a really strong Nashville team. Because like you said, the one thing that's consistent with this season and every other season for Nashville is they just don't score goals.
Yep. They said they even in Hani's Golden Boot year, it was like he was the only one scoring. Out of the playoff teams last year, 50 goals for 57, 55, 67, 57, 58, 66, 39. That's the top 7. And that really puts them in the out category. The only positive they had is they only gave up 32 goals, was the best in the league. That's what's held them on. Same deal in 22 where they finished in the Western Conference 5th. They had 52 goals that year, but I think 20 something of them, more than half of them came from Hani.
Yeah, literally half. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hani had like 26.
Yeah. So, again, like you mentioned, they only take you so far, right? But my question for you then, now that they've got the opening, what should they be looking for? Who should they be looking for? And does that involve a change in recruitment strategy?
I think they should go attack-minded coach. You have the groundwork already for a strong defense. I don't think it takes a mastermind to figure out how to keep them strong defensively. What you need is someone to come in and make these attacking players work with what you have. Because you're not, at least as of what we've seen from their history, you're not a team that's going to go pull Messi's and Suarez's and Griezmann's and Giroud's. You're going to be working with your Sam Surridge's and having to make that work with like Jacob Schaffelberg and whoever else you have helping out Hani Mukhtar. So I think you go for an attack-minded coach who can come in, make more of what he has available to him with this Nashville attack, get some more goals out of it, even if it means conceding a extra goal or two, because you just have the personnel on this team that you'll be strong defensively. It doesn't really like you don't need to rewrite the script in the defense. You have a multiple time defensive player of the year. You have some of the best defensive midfielders in the league who have tons and tons of experience and can help bolster that back line. You have a veteran goalkeeper and like you just keep it simple in the defense and you'll be fine. They need someone who's going to figure out the attack because nobody has done so far.
See, that's interesting to me because and let me ask you before I go into that your thoughts on the second part of the question in the recruitment strategy. Do they need to change? Do they need to go, outside of MLS? Do they need to go more international? Do they need to go, more homegrown? What, does that need to change, or can they just go on with what they've got?
I think my issue with the way that they have done it so far is not that they are sticking with going more American based, because I was thinking about this somewhat recently, and I feel like a lot of the successful recent expansion teams have been successful because they've stuck to a theme, like St. Louis and bringing in Bundesliga players. Nashville has been successful. They've stuck with the American players. LAFC and Atlanta United have stuck with the South American players, and it's worked for them. And I don't think it's an issue for them to go down that road, but to a point you mentioned earlier, if you're going to do that, I think you have to invest in developing players yourself. Like invest in your academy, bring up players from your own like that are homegrowns and work them into the team, because I think that's the best way you're going to get top level talent that's going to kind of fit your like domestic player route that you're taking. So I don't necessarily think they need to go and bring in international players, but you got to invest more in your academy, because you're not just going to be able to trade for somebody in the league that's going to be a next level talent to help your team. You're not going to be able to trade for like a Jesus Ferreira. Like Dallas is just not trading them to Nashville. Like Jesus Ferreira is leaving the league or he's staying in Dallas. So the best you're going to get is your like Corey Baird. That's like the best you're going to be able to trade for. So I guess that's my answer to their scouting changes that they need to make.
I hear Tom Barlow's available if you're looking for
I don't
top
think he is
quality.
available. I don't think Chicago's letting him go.
I'm sure everybody's got a price.
Nobody does cardio quite like Tom.
I don't know. They've already got one cardiac kid,
Now I don't get it.
Alex Mouil. He just up and
On
back and up.
Chicago? Oh,
Come on. Who are we
no,
talking
I
about? You
know
can
he's
put
on
it
Nashville.
together.
Well, because we were talking about Tom Barlow in Chicago, and then you said, "Oh, they already got a cardiac kid." Got to specify Nashville. The topic was changed to Chicago.
This is why we can't have nice things, everybody.
All right, well, what do you think? Clearly, you seem to have some differing thoughts. So, what do you think?
So, in terms of expansion or changing your recruitment strategy, I don't think that the Americans are a problem if they're the right ones, right? Sean Davis has fit in really nicely for them, has fit the style that they've needed. Walker Zimmerman, of course. Joe Willis has done well for them. Um, they compete well and they do a good job, but I think they get let down by the lack of quality from players who are not named Hani in the attacking phase, right? Tyler Boyd is, and I think he's been hurt, but not nearly what I thought he would have provided to this team up to this point. Um, if I'm just looking here really quick at their roster, he's played 9 games. He's got 1 assist, and we're 12, 13 games in. So he's playing in games, but he's not producing, which is shocking to me. On the other side, you got Alex Mouil, who, as we mentioned, very, very good, very fit, but doesn't produce in those moments, right? It probably wouldn't hurt to go dip your toe into the international waters a little bit, see if you can make improvements in your starting 11 or even some depth pieces, right? Like those, you don't have to be all American all the time. As nice as it would be to have a pool of American players to pick from, even the likes of like Shaq Moore, who's been okay, but not like a standout instant pick right back for every opportunity, you know? I don't think that they need to go and be like a full revamp of like, I'm going to be the next Atlanta United, but it wouldn't hurt to dive in and see if you can add some quality across, your GAM TAM level players, right? And then as for the coach and who they need to be looking for, I think it needs to fit whatever recruitment style they're going to go for, right? And if I use Red Bull as an example, as we always should, because Red Bull is king, if we brought in Sandro Schwartz and didn't have a plan to bring in some game changer when we're in possession like Forsberg, after we got rid of Luquinhas and after we had kind of was hoping for other players to get back, his possession style wouldn't have worked. We would have been in really, really deep trouble because we didn't have the players to match that system. So likewise, if you were going to bring in a coach to Nashville who wants to keep the ball, play exciting, expansive football, and you're not going to invest in more attacking minded players in the roles of the 8, 10, 7, 11, you're going to struggle, right? A bunch of their midfielders right now are more defensive minded. They don't play well in the tight spaces, advanced as well as somebody else trained in that position probably could. So if you have somebody who wants to play with a true number 10 and you don't bring that in, or you want to bring Hani underneath and you don't have the right players left or right of him to create it a little bit better, they will struggle. So specifically who to bring in, I'm assuming you don't have names because you never have names.
I kind of have a very, very, very small chance it happens, but
Ooh, go for it.
bold hot take.
Don't say Frank Lampard.
That's not what I was gonna say. And like I said, I want to reiterate this. I think it's a very, 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 very small chance that it actually happens. But I'm looking at the Philadelphia Union, who hasn't won a game since the
No
beginning of April.
way.
And if it continued for the rest of the season and Philly happened to do something with Jim Curtin, I love Jim Curtin to Nashville because I was saying that I think they should go down the route of trying to develop academy players and going that route to kind of like supply players for their team if they're going to stick with the American route. And who better than Jim Curtin? I mean, the guy has proved countless times that he could do it with Philly, and he really revamped that Philly academy. So I feel like he would be perfect there. But like I said, almost certainly is never not going to happen. I think Jim Curtin would have to go like multiple years being garbage for him to get fired. But who knows? Maybe he leaves on his own. Maybe he doesn't stick around in Philly. But
Yeah,
that's like for the way that I would want them to go, that's the guy I would want in charge.
that's a stretch. That's like
Yeah, obviously it's a stretch. I don't know
you
how many
pulled
times I
every
gotta tell you
muscle
it
in your
was a
body.
stretch. Huh?
You pulled every muscle in your body stretching that one. Um,
I didn't say it was gonna happen. I said it was a very small chance, but that's
so
the guy I would want.
I've seen a few names floated around, and one that I think would be an interesting one. Just recently left West Ham, and that's David Moyes. And I know his Everton days are long past, but what I remember about him and what was put back into my brain during Tim Howard's Hall of Fame speech is that he's a player motivator. He gets the best out of every player in his squad by pure will. Not to say that his tactics aren't great, because they are, but he wills them to get better. And they have a few young guys on the team, Sipic, Gaines, Jones, these sorts of younger players that could really benefit from that sort of just willingness to get better every day. Like looking at the coach and saying, I believe in you, go out and do what I've asked you to do. You can do it. That's one way you can, take those players and get them better. Unfortunately, he won't have an impact on every player as Alex Mawila is already perfect. So he can impact 95% of the team, but not all of it. But I think that'd be an interesting. I don't think with David Moyes is an interesting one. We've seen Dean Smith, who has been relatively successful for a coach from the Premier League or the English system that has usually struggled here. So that might be a way of thinking, but based on Nashville's transfer history itself, I can't imagine they're looking big international coach for their team.
They don't have international slots for the manager.
Literally, right? So there are their names out there, right? Like Antonio Conte, Frank Lampard, Graham Potter. They're all out, right? They're all out there, but I can't imagine any of them are
Dan, let's just throw everybody out there. Why don't we?
well, that's what I mean. Like Jose Mourinho's out there too, but
Sir Alex
no,
Ferguson out of
right?
retirement.
Like none of those guys. But if I had to guess, it's going to be somebody who knows the league already, right? Somebody who has been exposed to MLS because we know how difficult it is to adjust, and sometimes you need a second chance, right? Sometimes your first chance isn't great, but your second one is better in a better system, better team, whatever. And we all know that Nashville loves a Red Bull, don't they? I don't know if you've heard, but one Gerhard Struber just got let go from Salzburg.
I really hope they don't go down that route.
I don't
I
know.
really hope they don't.
I don't know, but you
I
know,
wouldn't put it past them because of exactly what you said.
that's what I
They
mean.
love they love Red Bull players and Red Bull system.
Jurgen Klinsmann's out there if you want somebody to really let you
Oh
down.
God, no, no,
Wayne
no.
Rooney's still out there if you want somebody to take you from playoff contender to wooden spoon. I mean, there's tons of options, but you know, in reality, right? Foreign managers are hard to adapt. You want somebody, who's been experienced a little bit. I wouldn't be shocked if somebody like Robin Fraser's phone's not ringing. I wouldn't be shocked if Hernan Losada is not having his phone ring right now. Right? Hey, you guys kind of know the league. And here's why, right? They've already got as you mentioned, the foundation, the defensive foundation of the the group set and ready to go. You need somebody who knows the ins and outs of the league to say, okay, what player can make an impact here that we can afford, that we have the international slots for, that they can game plan around it. I think Robin Fraser is a good coach. I know he didn't have a great end at Colorado, but he took them to first in the West, right? That
We talked. That's a fluke, though. We talked about that. It was clearly a fluke.
all Nashville needs is one fluke, and they're top of the East. All they need is a
But
fluke.
but what did that ultimately get? Like Colorado didn't win the Shield, they didn't win the playoffs. Like you might as well have just stuck with Gary Smith then, because I don't think Frazier's getting you any further in MLS Cup playoffs than
Can you
Gary Smith got
imagine?
you.
Can you imagine Antonio Conte trying to figure out this league's rules and regulations and system?
I mean,
I
he's not
want I
coming
want
here, so why are we
I
even
want you to
doing?
buy I want you to buy me a number 7 who can do this, this, and this. Okay, with our international slot. The hell is an international slot? Go get me Mbappe.
They need all
No.
their international slots back to bring in all the Italians that
Yeah.
Conte would want to bring
I
in.
would say we're gonna see we're gonna see
Conte should have been in charge of Toronto.
Chiesa and all these, but realistically, right? Like they don't need a groundbreaker here. I don't think they do. I think they need
Why
somebody
not?
who
Stick with Gary
I'm
Smith
not I'm
then.
not saying they're not going to have one. I'm saying they don't need
Why? You should stick with Gary Smith then. Why switch up on Gary Smith if you're just going to go right back to being
all you
mediocre?
need. So the change in manager gives players a boost, right? In wanting to impress and the energy that they give. Sometimes you just lose a locker room. Sometimes things just go stale. Sometimes you don't have the motivation you used to have. It happens in coaching, right? There are times where you start off with a group of players and they're all aboard what you want to do, and it works, and they're giving you everything they got, and it's brilliant. And then all of a sudden, things start going poorly. Doubt starts creeping in, and one by one, players start to drop off until you've lost too many of them, and now you've got to make a change. The second you make that change, all those players are back up here, and they're giving you everything you got. And if you're telling me that the play all they need is somebody to figure out a little change to make them where you think that they can go, you don't need a world beater to do that. You just need somebody who's going to change the energy in the room, right? That's why I like Hernan Losada there because I think he has gotten the short end of the stick multiple times, right? The DC job was a nightmare, right? And then he goes to Montreal where they sell 3 of his best players, and then they're like, "Oh, you didn't work a miracle, you're out." I think given the proper resources, I think he can do something really nice.
I'm tired of recycling these managers that haven't been able to be successful in the league. I am not on board for Robin Fraser or Losada signing here. I'd rather them be ambitious and try with somebody new, because I think if you bring in Losada or Fraser, you're going right back to at best being like a 5 or 6, maybe a 4 in the playoffs,
But you don't know that
and then
though.
getting knocked down the quarters again.
So here's the deal, right? If we went and I haven't done this, but maybe I'll do this later today. If we went and looked at the record of first time in MLS versus your next, the next job that you get, right? Or foreign versus American, whatever. it is not a unknown fact that first time managers from overseas struggle in this league for the most part, right? Sandra Schwartz right now is doing an exceptional job for what, but that was the reason we were all worried about it, because it's a new guy coming overseas and we don't know what he's going to bring, right? Once you get a feel for how it works and the system and the players, that you just need the right fit, and maybe that's the right fit for them. So,
Do you have an example
what do
of
you mean?
somebody
I
like
just said
of a coach that came over, struggled in their first stint with a team, and then went to a different one and succeeded?
no. I told you I didn't do that work, but I'm sure that there's an example there.
I could think of one off the top of my head that's the opposite of that so far. Neville in Portland has been very poor to start the season, and wasn't exactly a world beater with Miami either.
Now I've got work to do after this, because I think
He's got a point to
now I want
prove
to know.
now.
Now I want to know, right? But
I'm trying to even think of a manager that had two stints in
well,
MLS.
that's a struggle, right? Is how many times have we given them that shot? So you never know. But yeah, we'll go through, and cause we got a couple of things that we need to work on there. But listen, end of the day, right? Like I think they're going to stick with somebody who knows the league. They don't need to do anything super crazy right now, and maybe it's just an interim guy. Maybe it's, well, they just got, and I can't even say that because they just got rid of the Huntsville head coach too. So there's really nobody in the pipeline who's like next up. So they're going to have to go with somebody, and I think they're going to go more stable than more, because that's who they are. They're not a big splash, oh my God, this is a crazy, signing sort of thing. They're just very simple. Keep it, stick to the system, do their thing.
Hey, but okay, so my argument against that, look at Charlotte this year. They took a risk, brought in Dean Smith, who wasn't a great manager in England, but has come in and has taken this team way above what we expected them. They're sitting fifth right now. They look good. They don't look out of place. That's what I think that they should be going for, because Nashville is better than Charlotte. With the right head coach, Nashville is better than Charlotte. So I like your shout for David Moyes. I don't think he comes over here, if I'm being honest, in my opinion, but that's the type of signing I think they should go for. I think if they bring in a Robin Fraser, we're just seeing them go right back to the same thing that they had with Gary Smith.
Well, let's put it this way, right? Let's look at FC Cincinnati, who were literally the worst team in the league for 3 years. They went through a South African, a Frenchman, a Dutch guy, a Frenchman again, who was the interim coach as they both got fired, a Dutchman again in Jaap Stam, who was brutally beat down, Tyra Marshall, the interim, and then they go to an American in Pat Noonan, who played in this league for as long as he's been, a player, and then was in the front office and all this stuff. And all of a sudden now they're doing better, right? And yes, there was more significant investment, but you can't say they didn't invest either at FCC before he got there, So there are examples for and against it, but knowing the system and having a detailed plan of what you want to do matters, right? Robin Fraser was with the men's national team for a while. It's not like he doesn't understand how to work with an American group.
I think FCC got the boost because of the investment. I mean, as soon as Lucci, Brenner, and I won't say Brandon Vasquez, because that one was kind of a build up, not necessarily bringing in for big money, but I mean they invested in Nwobodo, Brenner, Lucci, like they spent the money to bring in talented players, and I think Noonan's done a really good job, but I do think some of that is definitely them investing way more than they did the first 3 seasons.
Who took over Toronto FC after Greg Vanny left?
Was it Armas?
It was Chris Armas, right? And then they went to Javier Perez. Then they went to Bob Bradley, and then they went to John Herdman, right? So proof that spending doesn't automatically fix it, but also
Sure.
proof that
That's not the
also,
claim I'm making.
right? But also proof that the using somebody who knows the league isn't perfect either, right? Like Chris Armas and Bob Bradley both struggled. That being said,
Exactly. Which is why
it needs to be the right fit.
Which is why you should take a risk on someone outside of the league. You're helping me prove my point.
No, I'm just saying. All I'm saying is it's got to be the right fit. You can go.
Of course, that's like saying you need to score goals to win games. Like
FC Cincinnati went out and got a big fancy hire in Jaap Stam, big AC Milan legend, and it was garbage. So it's not just saying, oh, we're going to go out and get somebody to take a risk. It's going to be a risk whoever you hire. So you have to be the right fit. And right now, with the group that they have, the big hire isn't going to be, I don't think, the right fit. I think the right fit is somebody who knows the league, who can get you to a spot where then you can say, okay, I'm going to go invest. And if at the end of your contract, we don't want you to come back, you don't come back. And
I'm
then we
not
go then we go
I'm
for somebody big.
I'm not comparing current Nashville roster to early days FCC roster because those are completely different levels.
Y'all still have Jurgen Locadia, who was a Premier League
Oh, Jurgen
starter at the
Locadia!
time.
Wow,
Oh my
world
God.
beater, Jurgen Locadia.
Don't look at me like you. Well, they had Kenneth Vermeer. How dare you disrespect Kenneth Vermeer?
Because he was so good when he was with Bob Bradley and everybody else.
All I'm saying is that they gotta. I think the hire needs to follow the recruitment strategy, and if you're gonna stick with mainly American-based players, it's got to be somebody who knows the league because you're gonna have somebody come in from overseas who's expecting a different type and caliber of player, and then not be able to adjust to what they've got. That's all I'm saying.
For me, it should have been Bruce Arena or Jesse Marsch, and one of those
And
is off the table.
listen, Bruce Arena was on my short list too. By the way, I just don't know if
Of
he's
course,
legally allowed to do
I
it.
think. Yeah, I mean, I think Bruce Arena's on everybody's short list for every single team that has an opening, but
Yeah,
it's really just a question of whether or not he's allowed to coach.
Bruce was the first name I wrote down. I'm like, boom, home run hire. Like, take the
Of
Americans,
course,
go
100%.
call up FC Dallas, give an international slot away for Omar Gonzalez, hit up New England, give a little bit of gam for Emma Boateng, bang, you're
Get Bobby
in.
Wood back on the
Bobby
team.
Wood, a home run, right? But then I'm like, wait a second, I don't know if he's cleared to do that, so maybe not, right? But he's the answer, by the way. I'm just saying of the people who I think would be good fits that are allowed to do it, I think these two are okay. I'm glad
Listen, I don't think. Huh?
I would say I'm glad we've come to common ground on Bruce Arena as the home run answer, but we don't know if it's allowed.
Bruce Arena is the home run answer for every team. Like I would take him over Pineda in a second in Atlanta, but I don't think that's going to happen, unfortunately. I'm a little bit worried that Atlanta's going to be like rubbing their hands, being like, "All right, we're going to go Pineda to Gary Smith now," and I'm a little bit worried we're gonna be stuck in the Nashville mediocrity shoes.
Well, you know who wishes they could get back to at least mediocrity?
Canada.
That's Canada. Goodness me, are they down bad? I read in a little bit more about their situation, and I mean they're commenting on influencer Instagram posts for bathwater down bad. That's how down bad they are.
What is the context behind that? What do you mean?
Don't worry about it.
How do I not worry about that? Who are they commenting on?
It's a comparison of the level of down bad. But since you're not hip like me, you don't know how the kids are referring to things these days. So
You're right. I don't.
what do you know?
I know nothing apparently.
But here's what I know is that Canada's got a new coach, and it is Red Bull's own Jesse Marsch. Coming a couple of months after Marsch did not hide his feelings towards current USMNT head coach Greg Berhalter during one of the recent national team cycles, he now gets to have a go at them in future tournaments. And while this is all good and exciting, and we are going to talk about the impact on USMNT as a whole, there is this little nugget about how he was hired and what his official title is, because he's not just the Canada's head men's national team coach. He is MLS Canada men's national team head coach as his official title, which raised an eyebrow.
Oh, is that because of the like investment from the MLS teams?
Well, it's good to know you've done tons of research, Connor, in preparation for this episode. The title MLS Canada's men's national team head coach is made possible due to the philanthropic contributions from owners of CF Montreal, specifically Joey Saputo, Vancouver's ownership group. So is Saputo individually, Vancouver's ownership group, and Toronto's ownership group.
Man, Saputo put more money into the Canada men's national team coach than he has into his own team.
he put a good little bit into it. He said it was from his own charity. It was from the article. So what a good guy.
I'm sure the Montreal fans would love to benefit from that charity. They've had one DP since like 2020.
Well, and I know what the instant reaction is going to be like, oh, MLS is done killing USL. Now they're moving on to every other soccer continent in the world to take over the world. This name was proposed by the General Secretary of Canadian Soccer himself, Kevin. So for anybody who thinks
Does anybody have a short title? That's what I want to know.
No.
Every title you've read out is so long.
They're Canadian, they just got to be really nice and give you this nice, long, proper title, right?
Want like head coach, secretary, general manager.
So anybody who thinks Don Garber is like spreading his reach, like calm down, kids, like relax. But it does highlight the dire need for money that the Canadian Federation's facing right now. They were down so bad before that just a few months ago, their players protested and refused to play due to conditions that they were in. It just immensely in a hole right now. So, Connor, your thoughts on all of this so far that we just covered?
I am
Mainly the not on the USMNT side, but the
the Canada side.
yeah.
I am just happy that Jesse didn't end up with the USMNT because if you pay
So ignore the USMNT side in his first sentence. I'm so glad he's not in the USMNT.
yeah
Listen to anything.
no, I don't listen to anything you say. If you listen to like how he's been talking about things in his short commentary stint, I think the guy is. If you think Greg is like biased towards MLS players, I think Jesse's even worse than that. I think he is super biased towards MLS players. And I think if he was the US coach, you'd be seeing way more of them in the team, even though he's had stints in Europe and whatnot. But I wouldn't be surprised. What I was going to say and link that to the Canada thing is I wouldn't be surprised if there's more of a shift to that on the Canadian side. And you see more of like the fringe players that were playing overseas maybe start to get dropped out of the team in favor of guys that are playing in MLS. So I'm thinking guys like obviously Davies and Jonathan David, like they're not getting dropped off the team, but maybe someone like Liam, no, not want to use him, like Ike Ugbo, who's playing with Sheffield Wednesday. Like that's a name where I could see him getting dropped for some other Canadian striker, Prince Owusu or something. Actually, I don't know if Prince Owusu is Canadian, but
he isn't. He just plays on Toronto. So go on.
Okay. Well, I mean, it's not a bad guess to guess that the striker for Toronto is maybe Canadian, but some other Canadian striker to bring in instead of him from MLS. So I wouldn't be surprised if he kind of goes down that route. He's got a lot of work to do, and from a Canadian perspective, some of their better defensive players right now, that being everybody on Portland, has been a mess so far this season. So, he's coming into a team that's in bad form, that's been in a bit of disarray, and it's definitely not something to discount. Look at New England. They had disarray at some point last season. We honestly, like, okay, maybe it was just me. I don't know. I don't think I was the only one that thought that it would kind of be over with going into this season, but clearly it's not because the team is still in much disarray. They're sitting bottom. Is it bottom of the league or bottom of the East? Yeah, bottom of the league. And not even tied. Like they are clearly bottom of the league. They've been super poor. In fairness, I think they only have 11 games played, so they can make up for that. But I would not discount the job that Jesse Marsch has to do with this team. But it is a good hiring for Canada, nonetheless. It is a very experienced coach overseas and in MLS. It's a good combination. I think it's the right hire from them. But maybe there's just too much to do for him. Maybe it's a Gary Smith type situation where he has to kind of right the ship, get things stable, and then you bring in someone to take them to the next level. But it's been a lot of buts, but we'll have to wait and see because I don't have the answers.
You never usually do. You usually just say a lot of hypotheticals.
Yeah,
I
well,
don't
that's
think,
how I save my own ass.
which is wrong. You need hard, strong comments. I don't think Ugbo is going anywhere. He's got 11 goals in the championship this season. He's done more than fine, right? But I think your worry should be with somebody like Theo Bair, who's playing at Motherwell, right? Like a low level Scottish team. Is he going to get dropped for somebody like, oh, I don't know, looking just really quickly, Jules Anthony Vilsaint, the CF
Who?
Montreal guy, CF Montreal striker. He's a youth player who's got 2 goals in 5 games, right? Is that change going to happen? Maybe. Is it going to be the right change? Who knows, right? But I think here's the problem is that they have had no turnover in like their next group up for a long time, right? I feel like every time you go into a national team picture, it's always the same group. You have the Alphonso Davies breaking in, and you have, maybe Ismail Kone, but for the most part, it's been Laren, it's been David, been Buchanan, and then it's been some combination of Johnston. Somebody needs to give him a chance and see what they can do, and he can put them together. But to go back on that, right, like all the way back, like Canada is $4 million in the hole right now. and this is a national team, like a national federation. So they're not just like starting up business. I mean, they have a business similar to what some was, where they're responsible for raising money and funding things, and it's not gone very well. So the gift that has been given from these Canadian MLS teams, it's not just for Marsch himself; it's for the entire ecosystem, right? It's like wiping out, I don't know, 30% or so of their debt to help boost the economy, right? And here's kind of the thing as it relates to the name itself. I'm going to use your term here. This is a nothing burger, right? Like no one's going to wake up when Copa America rolls around or the World Cup rolls around like, oh my God, MLS Canada head coach Jesse Marsch is here. Woo! MLS. Like, no, right? We're going to show up and be like, okay, cool. He's here. Time to see what he can do. Because it doesn't matter what your name is, because everything, I mean, it's not really a soccer thing, but college teams have their head coach named after a donor all the time, right? I think it was something like the Texas volleyball is named after a donor or something like that. Like it's not uncommon in sports; it's just uncommon in soccer, right? So nobody cares. Nobody looks at like, oh, you're named after this, whatever, right? The thing that I first originally thought would be a bigger, interesting talking point was how it impacts the CPL, right? A league very focused on youth development, funding through player sales, trying to build up the youth part of the Canadian national team. Would putting MLS's name on your head coach and allowing 3 MLS teams to fund the whole thing and pump money into the league, would that, diminish the impact of the Canadian Premier League? I don't think so. And I might be wrong because I live not in Canada, even though I'm kind of close. CPL is going to grow. It's going to grow at a fine rate, right? It's always going to be the second league or the third league in North America or whatever. But they didn't have the funds to do what Saputo and company did, right? And that's okay, right? They started up in like 2019. That's fine, right? But if you want the whole thing to get better, you have to think outside the box, as the Athletic article said, and that's what they did. Again, nobody's going to wake up in 4 months and be like, "Oh my God, look at this guy who's named after a league," right? Like it's increased investment. It is really, really important for the current state of that national team to take it in and utilize it properly. Now that's going to be the question, right? $1.5 million is great, but if you're not putting that where it needs to go, whether it be the national team coach, which I think, as you mentioned, Jesse, I think is a good hire, or funding your own league to make sure your league doesn't go on, whatever, right? You need to use it properly, and that's something to be keep an eye on, I guess, for lack of a better term, because it's impressive, right? This guy Kevin Blue, he goes out, he's got no money. They're like, you have zero money. Go find us a new head coach because John Herdman left. And he goes out and gets one of the most in-demand coaches at the time, right? People are still calling Jesse Marsch's name to try and coach club teams, nationally, whatever. Now, he had the money then to do it after this, but he went out and fundraised it, right? He went out and fundraised it, and then he put it towards what it needed to go to. So he's done a good job. Now it's a matter of him, Jesse getting enough out of them to be successful wherever they are.
Are you finally done yapping about MLS?
Brother, what I was talking about the Canadian Premier League for the entire time. What are you talking
It
about?
was not about it. You were talking about how he has the label MLS Canadian men's national team head coach or whatever. But
This is
listen, there's
how.
gonna obviously I know why you're bringing it up because there's gonna be people, of course, that are like, oh, MLS is ruining the Canadian Premier League and they're ruining the Canadian men's national league because they're slapping their name on everything and they want to own everything. And listen, they're gonna anytime MLS's name is mentioned, there's gonna be people like that. I don't even think you should give them the light of day. I think you should just fully ignore them and forget that those people even exist. And we should just, and I know you covered it as well, but I think we should talk about like how Jesse's impact on the team. Like, do we think that like what do they look like now for Copa? Like, what do they look like for the World Cup? Like, are they a serious threat again? Like, there's a lot of guys that are hitting their prime for Copa America, and they'll still be in their prime for the World Cup. Like, are they a threat? Like, are we
Well,
going to see Canada 2.0 in the World Cup?
Mister, I can't wait and be patient. If you allowed me to get to my next transition point, maybe
Well,
we
I'm
would have gotten
transitioning
there.
it for you.
Well, maybe I'm just gonna hit end on this recording and we're gonna be done because you, sir, have not earned the right to have this conversation because you're Mister. I need everything done right now.
That'd be fine with me. That's less editing I have to do.
Anyways, it begs the question because Jesse was rumored to be leading the USMNT, rumored to be a leading USMNT candidate at one point. Is the USMNT going to regret his choice based off of what he can do with the Canadian national team or what he could have done with the United States national team? So, because you don't like hearing my voice, Connor, I'm going to go here. I'm going to go on mute and listen to you rabble about nonsense for the next 15 minutes.
Oh, finally. This is what we've been waiting for. You're welcome, everybody. I got him to go on mute for once. I think the U.S. is not going to regret missing out on Jesse Marsch. I think I'd like to see, I think we talked about this in the past. I'd like to see like a fully international coach come in with this team because our team at this point is almost solely international players. And a lot of them have spent either like 95% of their time internationally or 100% of their time internationally. So I don't think having an MLS coach like Greg Berhalter is the right way to go. Not because I not because I think Greg's like the worst coach in the world because he used to be an MLS coach and wasn't even successful in MLS. I just don't think the way he wants to play matches with our best players. Our best players play overseas. So I think we should bring in a coach that is from overseas. And obviously, even within that, it's going to be a little bit difficult because our guys are playing all over the place, a lot in Italy, some in England, some in Germany. But that's the route I'd like to see them take. I'd like to see them go with an international coach. I think bringing in Jesse isn't going to solve the issue. I think we're going to run into the same issues because I think Jesse has a very MLS mindset in his tactical approach as well. I'm sure some of the international coaching has rubbed off a bit on him as well. I'm not saying he'd be worse or even like at the same level as Greg. I'm sure he'd be a bit better, but I think there's even another step that we could take if we bring in somebody international. Whether or not that's really realistic, I don't know with the money situation. But hey, I mean, if Canada can have all their owners pay to hire the head coach, who's to say that we have like how many teams that are American in MLS? If they all just chip in a little bit of money, all of a sudden we could pay the coach. So let's go get like a Jose Mourinho and have 27 MLS teams chip in like a couple mil each. And all of a sudden now we have one of the best coaches in the world coaching our national team.
Sorry, we can't do that because that's kind of what we did to build our brand new state of the art training facility. And now everybody's up in arms because MLS is controlling the U.S. men's national team too. Don't you know that? Don't you know we can't do that?
You're being such an MLS shill right now. I don't like this.
um,
Cancel them. Get them.
I went in three different directions with this. So the first one was Jesse ever going to be brought in before the World Cup anyway? And that answer, of course, was no. Right. They had the opportunity to bring him in during the rehiring process. They passed. So anybody who thought that we were going to magically fire Greg and bring in Jesse, nope, not happening. And I think it's just silly to even think that that would have been a possibility. Then I looked at if we did for, let's play in a magical world where he does, would he even be better than Greg? And that's a what if for the ages, right? And we go back and you kind of mentioned a little bit, we go back to the conversation a lot of, what level of coach do we need to get the best out of our EuroLeague heavy roster? You mentioned international. I'm along the same boards with you for the men's national team, where Greg's probably not the guy, right? We've talked about that copious amounts of times. Jesse, even though he has that EuroLeague experience, heavy pressing style, wants to dominate the attacking third, the middle third, and leave our back line in 1v1, battles, right? I think that he would end up turning our more creative, impactful, players, Pulisic, Reyna, whatever, Weah, into just these high pressing, grunts that are looking just win the ball, win the ball, win the ball, and then once we get it, just get it up there quickly, right? And he does have moments where that doesn't happen, and he tries to keep the ball a little bit better, and that's fine. But for the most part, that's his style, right? I think his style benefits a midfielder like Weston McKennie and Tyler Adams, who are just all over there, just destroying the ball and carrying it. And, that's their style. But net negative when he hinders the ability of, players in possession like Pulisic, Reyna, Weah, things like that. I agree. I think the coach needs to have a lot of European League experience and a track record of success in those leagues, right? You can't just be some Joe Schmo, who was in the Scandinavian third division, because that doesn't work, right?
That was Greg.
Yeah,
Joe
you're right.
Smo
That
and
was, yeah, you're right. Um, and then finally, does Jesse make Canada better? 100%. I think he's a perfect fit, right? Man motivator, coach whose tactics are very strong, but very much relies on athleticism and controlling the hectic chaos of the game, right? Creating chaos, make it hectic, and then control it. And that, I mean, on the field, that's one thing, but that's also what Canada is right now. It's a bunch of hectic chaos, and he's looking to control it, right? So it's a good fit, both metaphorically and whatever. But they have talent, no doubt, right? You're looking at this roster of players who most are playing either in MLS or overseas, and they're talented. Don't get me wrong, but at the end of the day, the technical side of it isn't quite up to the level for the majority of the roster, where a coach, again, I'll just use one who's on the free agent market right now. If Jose Mourinho came into the Canadian men's national team, I think he struggles because he expects a certain level. Canada's not at that level. Not all of their players, at least. There are some players who he can work with, and that's fine. So when you're getting ready for these big tournaments, the World Cup included, and mainly the headliner, it is what can we do to get ourselves the best results possible with our players? And Jesse is a motivator. I mean, I remember watching that clip of him against Liverpool, right, in the Champions League, where he was down and he motivated these guys to play a roster that's 3 times his payroll and compete with them to the very end, right? That's the sort of coach that they need right now. And I'm not saying that's the long-term answer, but it can be a stopgap until they get themselves into a stable financial situation and continue producing players through CPL or wherever it may be. He might be the perfect fit for them.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. I think he's a good guy to, like we said with Gary Smith, he's a good guy to lay the groundwork, get the ship righted in the correct direction, and then if you want to take the team to the next level, I think you go outside of Jesse Marsch.
Great. Well, since you're so tired of me talking, why don't you do the outro then?
You know
No!
I can't do the
Whoa,
outro.
hold on. Whoa. Yeah, that's what
I'm just tired of you talking and shilling for MLS. Like, listen, they need to up their contract with us if they're going to have us keep defending them so much.
Well, here's the problem. First of all, that's how you know that Connor doesn't listen to me when I talk, because everybody knows that the only thing he heard was MLS. He's like an anti-MLS troll on Twitter. He sees it, he's like, oh my god, it's the worst thing ever. We need to stop.
You got me.
Yeah. So, yeah, that is we'll end it there. I think that's a pretty good spot to do it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. So thanks so much, everybody, for listening. We hope you enjoyed it. Make sure you're following us on all your. Let's do social media first. Make sure you're following us on all forms of social media so you know when we post our clips and you can interact with us. Twitter, YouTube, TikTok. And then make sure you're also following us wherever you get your podcasts so you know when our next episode goes live. Probably some more news because it breaks every single day and we got to talk about it. Yep. Thanks again for listening. We hope you enjoyed it, and we will see you next time on the next episode of the Designated Players and MLS podcast. See ya.